may we request Miss Martin to lead us the opening prayer.
Let us pray in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord God, we thank you for this wonderful day that you've given to us, for us to have another day to learn. May you give our teacher the wisdom for him to impart all his knowledge to us, and may you give us the knowledge and understanding so that we can able to understand all our lessons well. We thank you for giving us um, for keeping us safe, and may you continue to guide and protect us. Amen. In the name of the
Amen. In the name
Father,
of the Father, and of
and
the
of the
Son, and of the
Son, and
Holy
the Holy
Spirit.
Spirit.
Amen. Okay, good morning. Again, thank you for 80 students who are currently attending our meeting now. Um, I think these are the regular attendees. You're the regular attendees of our meeting, and for that, I thank you for your consistent attendance in our video conferences. Um, so So may we now continue our discussion. Um, Please take note that this will be our last meeting, our last conference prior the midterm examination. Please also take note that you will still have one quiz before the midterm examination, and later if we still have time, we will decide, or I'll be asking you, okay, when will you have the last quiz? But I am thinking now of, instead of a last quiz, I am thinking of a unit test to review you for a unit test which will serve as your review test prior the midterm examination. Okay, but anyway, we'll have to continue our discussion first. Okay, because the coverage of the exam will up to the coverage of the midterm examination is from writing and assessing learning outcomes up to guidelines in constructing matching type of tests. So maybe now continue our discussion to the last topics, and these two topics are the guidelines on constructing true, false, or alternate response tests, and the other one are guidelines on constructing matching type of tests. Okay, so allow me to start with a reflection. Yeah, a reflection or a summary of what we've always been telling in class, what we've always been discussing in class. And I posted this in my Facebook status. I think that was last week. And I said in English on classroom assessment, I posted in the Facebook this reflection that all teaching and learning activities have to be rooted from the learning specifics we intend for our students. And these intentions are student learning outcomes. All learning tasks, assessments or not, have to be helpful in preparing have to be helpful to prepare learners for bigger assessment that culminates learning. Learning is culminated by a performance assessment or a paper and pencil assessment. In today's flexible learning, learners' weekly task has to prepare them for the quiz, while the latter has to prepare them for the major examination. It is therefore important for teachers that all elements of the educative process have to be in congruence with one another. The student learning outcomes, if well crafted, will ensure this congruency. This is the principle of instructional alignment. And I also posted a Filipino version of this reflection, and I said, lahat ng gawaing pagtuturo at pagkatuto ay dapat nakaangkla sa mga uri ng pag-unawa na inaasam natin para sa ating mga mag-aaral. Ang mga ito ay mga bunga ng pagkatuto. Lahat ng gawaing pagkatuto, pagtatasa man o hindi, ay kailangan makatutulong sa paghahanda ng mag-aaral para sa malawakang pagtatasa na siyang pinakasukat ng pag-unawa. Ang pagsusukat na ito ay maaaring pagtatasang gawa o pagtatasang sulat. Sa panahong ang pagkatuto ay online o naaayon sa sitwasyon, ang mga lingguhang gawaing pagkatuto ay kailangan may handa ang mag-aaral sa maikling pagsusulit. Ang mga maikling pagsusulit naman ay dapat makatutulong sa mag-aaral para sa malawakang pagsusulit. Sa pangkahalatan, napakahalaga para sa mga guro na lahat ng salik ng prosesong edukatibo ay kailangang akma para sa isa't isa. Ang mga bunga ng pagkatuto, kung ang mga ito ay naihanda ng tumpak, ang makapanigurado ng pagkakaakma ng mga ito. Ito ay ang tinatawag na pagkakahanay-hanay ng mga salik instruction. Please take note that this reflection paper would this reflection post in my FB status would remind us of three important things. First, that all our activities, all our activities in class, all our teaching and learning activities have to be parallel with one another, have to be congruent with one another, have to be aligned with one another. And alignment would mean each of these should support one another. Another is the second big idea from this reflection is, or in this reflection is this, that our small assessment tasks, okay, have to really prepare our learners for bigger assessment tasks. And third, and third, that learning outcomes ensure the congruency, the alignment of the teaching, learning activities in our respective classes. So these are the three important things that we have to understand, okay, in our previous discussion, okay, as summarized or as presented in this reflection FD status. Okay, so we always be reminded of all these things, considering that you are currently in a pre-service training, okay, in a pre-service training in the teacher education program. So last meeting, we already have discussed about the different guidelines that a teacher should follow when it comes to constructing objective test type, particularly a multiple choice test or even a multiple response test. The difference between the multiple choice test and the multiple response test is this, that a multiple choice test would allow or would require examinees to decide and identify the best answer from the provided alternatives or provided options. And when we say multiple response, this kind of objective test type would require examinees or learners to choose, okay, to choose more than one, more than one answers, okay, in a certain question or for a certain step. So the difference. But guidelines, okay, guidelines both for the multiple choice and multiple response, okay, are similar. So we already made mention of those guidelines, and now we proceed now on the next type of objective test, and that is the true/false test, or also known as alternative response or alternate response. But other materials name this kind of test, this kind of objective test as forced choice test. A forced choice because you are left with only two options, whether it's true or whether it's false. Um, I hope that you have read already, okay, the content of the module we posted or I posted in the learning management system that says that that true false questions or alternate response test or alternate response test or forced choice test, okay, this is the easiest type of objective test, okay, easiest when it comes to preparation. Napakadaling gawin daw nito. At the same time, ito yung klase ng pagsusulit o ito yung klase ng objektibong pagsusulit na mahirap makita ang kanyang reliability. Okay? Na pagsabing reliability, okay, this is the characteristic of a certain test, okay, that pertains to whether this test would really provide an objective measure of our students' learning progress or academic progress. We can only have a reliable true-false test or alternate response or forced choice test if, okay, there are many items to be provided in this kind of test. Okay? Kasi kung 10 items lang, it would not really that be reliable to provide us a good conclusion whether our learners have learned something from our discussion or not. So we now proceed to the different guidelines in constructing true-false tests or tinatawag din nating alternative response, or forced choice test. But please take note that this kind of test can actually have different variations. For example, a variation of this kind of test is the structured response test. Structured response because students are asked to examine two statements at the same time and to decide which of these two statements are true or false. That's a structured response test. So we proceed now to the different guidelines that we have to follow when we are to construct this kind of test. And before we proceed, allow me also to remind those who already have submitted their task for this week. Okay, I have seen your submission, but I think there are tests which you have constructed which really did follow the guidelines we have discussed last meeting. That's why we are discussing for you to be guided of what you are supposed to construct, of how you are supposed to construct, or how you are supposed to complete perfectly, okay, the weekly task. So for those who already have submitted anyway, you're given up to Saturday to change that submission. Okay? Because our discussion now would certainly help you, would certainly prepare you for a better output, for a better completion of your weekly task. So we proceed on the first guideline that our true false items, okay, should be stated, okay, should be stated as absolutely true or absolutely false without qualifications or exemptions. Let me read this. Base true false items upon statements that are absolutely true or false without qualifications or exemptions. Example. This is an example of undesirable. Nearsightedness is hereditary in origin. This statement is not absolutely true nor absolutely false. Why? Because this kind of statement is opinionated in nature. Because this is a debatable statement. Mean to say, as much as possible, our true false items, our true false statements should not be something that is opinionated, should not be something that is debatable. Because students will really be confused. Examinees will really be confused whether to answer it true or to answer it false because it's an opinion, not a kind of statement that is absolutely true or absolutely false. Tingnan mo yung statement na hereditary in origin. Yung kalabuan daw ng mata ay namamana, okay? At hindi
Sir?
nakukuha. Yes, yes, please.
Ay, sir, may mga magja-join daw po, sir.
Yung sasabi ko. You see, even in our online class, may mga nag-disturb. So, anyway, sige. I-welcome na natin sila before we continue. Meron pa ba? Ayan na. Okay. Meron pa. Okay. Okay, wala naman na siguro. Okay then, we continue our discussion. As I have said a while back, our true-false statements should be those that are absolutely true or absolutely false. Our statement should not be opinionated. It should not be debatable. Okay? For example, this one. Ang kalabuan daw ng mata ay namamana. This is debatable, right? O kaya sabihin mo na ang pagiging bakla ay namamana. That is also debatable. So meaning to say, we make sure that our statements in true-false test items have to be absolutely right or absolutely wrong. So to qualify this, to make this desirable, we say geneticists and I specialists believe that the predisposition in nearsightedness is hereditary. So this would make it absolutely true. Because this is a belief by scientists. This is a belief by experts. Okay, so kung sinabi mo dyan, for example, that homosexuality is hereditary, then that is a debatable statement. That is an opinionated statement. But if we would say that, based from geneticists believe that homosexuality may happen because of excessive X chromosome, then that would make it either absolutely true or absolutely false. Okay? Second guideline. Our true-false statements should be expressed as simply and as clearly as possible. This is similar with the guideline we said in the construction of multiple choice tests that we made mention that as much as possible, we refrain from adding or including excessive verbiage or irrelevant information or irrelevant words in our statement. This is similar with the construction of true-false tests. That, as much as possible, we make it a simple statement, a simple sentence, okay? Just a single sentence that would describe the topic or the learning content clearly as possible. This is undesirable. You see this? When you see a highway with a marker that reads Interstate 18, you know that the construction and upkeep of that road are maintained by the state and federal government. This is a very long statement, which we can actually make it simpler. Example, the construction and maintenance of interstate highways are provided by both state and federal government. This is a very simple statement, a very simple true-false item. Okay? So if we can actually rephrase our statements to make it short, to make it shorter, to make it simpler, to make it clearer, then we have to do that. Okay? Klaro po iyon. Then we have to do that. Hanggat pwede pa natin paiksiin, hanggat pwede pa natin simplihan, hanggat pwede pa natin gawing klaro ang ating mga statements when we do true-false test, then we have to do it. Then we have to make it. Okay? Next guideline. Express a single idea in each item. As much as possible, our true-false statements, our alternate response items, should be something that would only discuss one learning content and not mix of different learning content. Okay? This is undesirable. Water will boil at a higher temperature if the atmospheric pressure on its surface is increased and more heat is applied to the container. So which statement are you trying to test here? Which learning content are you trying to test here? This statement, this item has two concepts or two learning content being tested. What is this? It's about atmospheric pressure and it's about heat applied to the container. But we can make it at this one. Water will boil at a higher temperature if the atmospheric pressure on its surface is increased. This would mean that we are just merely referring to, okay, the higher temperature, okay, the higher temperature, okay, being caused by the atmospheric pressure on the surface of the water. Yun lang yung tinetest niya. But this one tests two learning content. Okay? So, you express the single idea. For example, sinabi mo halimbawa na homosexuality is hereditary, homosexuality is nature, is the homosexuality is dictated by nature and heredity. Okay? So there are two concepts there. There are two learning content there. It's hereditary, whether homosexuality is hereditary or whether homosexuality is being influenced by other factors. So you just focus on one idea, whether homosexuality is hereditary or whether homosexuality is influenced by other factors, by external factors, but not by heredity. But of course, you have to qualify that with others, because if merely you are not going to qualify that, if merely you are going to state that as such, then that would violate the first guideline in constructing alternate response items. Okay. Next, include enough background information and qualifications so that the ability to respond correctly to the item does not depend on some special or uncommon knowledge. Example, undesirable. The second principle of education is that the individual gathers knowledge. What do you mean by second principle? So there's no enough information about this. As nasabi dito, as much as possible, we provide enough background as regards the idea that we would like to test to our students. What is the second principle? Maraming gumagawa nito sa teacher ed na exam. The second principle of education, what do you mean by second principle? So better say, okay, who said the second principle? Maraming principles in education. There are many theories, okay, theories in education. For example, Jean Locke have principles of education also. We also have Simon Freud. We also have Holberg. We also have Bronfenbrenner. We also have other theories in education. So we better provide an information about this, the background information. According to John Dewey, the second principle of education is that the individual gathers knowledge. And this would make it desirable. Avoid the use of extreme modifiers or qualifiers. Okay, ito, sinabi niya, all sessions of Congress are called by the President. The qualifier, the extreme modifier or qualifier there is all. Now, the Supreme Court frequently rules on the constitutionality of law. Frequently is an extreme modifier or qualifier. That makes it true. An objective test is generally easier to score than an essay test. Generally is a qualifier or modifier. Okay, that makes it undesirable. Okay, so better we remove our extreme modifiers or qualifiers and we say the sum of the angles of a triangle is 180 degrees. The galvanometer is the instrument used for the metering of electrical energy used in a home. So we have to remove We should not make use of any extreme qualifier or modifier when we create statements in true-false test items. These are examples of extreme modifiers and extreme qualifiers. All, none, always, never, only, nobody, invariably, no one, that's absolute words, absolutely not, everybody, certainly everyone, certainly not. Qualifiers usually, frequently, often, sometimes, some, seldom, many, much, probably, a majority, up to most, might, a few, may, unlikely. So we avoid all these things when we are to craft, when we are to prepare our true-false items. Avoid lifting statements from the text, lecture, or other materials so that memory alone will not permit a correct answer. Usually I do this, pero this is not supposed to be done. We have to avoid it. Okay? For example, for every action, there is an opposite of equal reaction. Lagi binabanggit ito. And this is undesirable because it would just test memory. But if we are to make use of, we are to state a statement applying this principle, then that would make it desirable. If you were to stand in a canoe and throw a life jacket forward to another canoe, chances are your canoe would jerk backward. Okay, so this is an example. This is an application actually of this principle. So this is desirable than this one, and this would mean avoiding lifting or copying statements from a text or lecture. Next, avoid using negatively stated statements. So as much as possible, we are not going to have a negatively stated statement in a true-false item. For example, the Supreme Court is not composed of 9 justices. We avoid that. Better to say the Supreme Court is composed of 9 justices. No negatively stated items in a true-false test. Avoid the use of unfamiliar vocabulary. Okay? Remember, you test the learning content, you test the students' understanding of the learning content, and not their vocabulary skill or not to build their vocabulary. For example, sinabi mo dyan, according to some politicians, the raison d'etre of capital punishment is retribution. Of course, the raison d'etre is uncommon vocabulary, unfamiliar vocabulary, so better make it, according to some politicians, the justification for capital punishment is retribution. Maliban kung ang subject mo sa kanila ay political science, okay, or political science or major in political science sa mga estudyante mo, certainly they would understand this. But for a common student, for a general subject, certainly they wouldn't understand the raison d'etre, as we have said, as another term for justification. So we make use of familiar vocabulary. Next, avoid fake statements with some minor misleading words, spelling anomaly, misplaced phrases, and etc. May mga gumagawa nito, yung babaguhin lang ng spelling ng pangalan ng tao para lang makagawa silang true false statement, but actually that is not supposed to be done. For example, this one, the brain of the Katipunan is Emil Jacinto. Okay, that is very wrong. Binago mo lang ang spelling. So better we say the brain of the Katipunan is Emilio Jacinto if you would like it to be true. Pero kung gusto mo maging gusto mo maging false siya, pwede palitan si Emilio Jacinto ng ibang pangalan. The brain of the Katipunan is Andres Bonifacio. Okay? Bakit si Andres Bonifacio? Apolinario Mabini. Bakit si Apolinario Mabini? Kasi pwede malito mga estudyante na si Emilio Jacinto ay brain of the Katipunan, si Apolinario Mabini ay brain of the Revolution. So parehas may brain yung kanilang titulo. Okay? So better si ipalit, kung gusto mong false, better ipalit si Emilio Jacinto kay Apolinario Mabini kaysa kay Andres Bonifacio. Kasi doon sa title ni Andres Bonifacio, hindi naman brain na nakalagay sa title ni Andres Bonifacio. Okay? That's what we call as avoid tricky statements by merely making use of misleading word or spelling anomaly or even misplaced phrases. Ano yung ibig sabihin ng misplaced phrases? For example, sinabi mo dyan, sinabi mo dito, undesirable, ito kung sinabi mo na, Andres Bonifacio, who is the brain of the Katipunan, is the founder of KKK. That is undesirable. Better remove, okay, the misplaced phrase or misplaced modifier or the misleading word. Remove the brain of the Katipunan. Andres Bonifacio is the founder of KKK. That would make it desirable. Okay? Claro? Okay. Next. Avoid double negatives as it will make the test item unclear and definitely confuse learners. Ano yung ibig sabihin ng double negative? Both negative terms are used in the statement. For example, the changes that take place in early childhood are not unchangeable. Not is negative word, unchangeable is negative word, not unchangeable is a double negative. So as much as possible, we do not make use of this double negative. So tignan natin, the changes in early childhood are changeable. That is double positive. The changes in early childhood are changeable. Double positives are okay, but double negatives are not okay when we craft true false statements in a true false test item. Okay? Remember all these things. The first one, when we create true false statements, determine that the question are appropriately answered by true or false. You check whether it's answerable, whether our statement is answerable by true or false. Baka mamaya naman it's answerable by yes or no. O katulad ng mga math majors dyan, when I ask you to write questions, ang mga questions nyo, mga questions na nilagay ninyo doon, hindi naman talaga nagpo-promote ng development of the six levels of cognitive complexity. Pero answerable by yes or no, you check also. Okay? Number two, arrange the statement so that there is no discernible pattern of answers. Bawal po yung merong pattern ha kapag gumagawa ka ng true-false test. Bawal yung T, T, F, T, F, T, F, T, F. Bawal yung merong pattern. Dapat randomly ang sagot na T or F. Avoid the tendency to add details in the true statements to make them more precise. The answers should not be obvious to students who do not know the material. Okay? The answer to the question should not be obvious. You know, hindi obvious na false ang isang sagot kapag all, kapag gumagamit ka ng mga extreme modifiers or extreme qualifiers. Okay? So those are things about true-false items or true-false tests. Now, before we proceed to matching test type, okay, may we have an open forum or question and answer portion. Any question on this, on true-false items? Okay, kayo po ba ay gising pa? Any question on the guidelines with regards to false items or first choice test?
Wala na, sir.
Wala na. So make sure na ma-observe nyo lahat yun ha dun sa inyong
Okay.
split task. Okay, yes, Jovin? Ay,
Sir,
Mike.
sir, pwede ba na sa sa true or false ilalagay yung kunyari according to to John PJ, yung statement niya pwede lang yung true or
Yes,
false.
that follows the guidelines. Sabi natin, you have to provide enough background to the learning content that you are measuring in your true-false statement. So kung ang nagsabi noon ay, kung may nagsabi nung principle na yun sa education, then you have to provide a background about that information.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Any other clarification? Ron? Kay Ron, congratulations ha. Kayo ang isa kayo sa top 3 doon sa last weekly task. Top 1 is Jovert, followed by Jovit and May, tapos followed by Ron Matthew, Ramos, and Jeter.
Thank you, sir. Eh, wala na po akong questions.
Yes, Ron, ano question?
Wala po, wala.
Wala. Okay, how about the others? Si Divine kanina may question siya. Divine?
Eh, sir, wala na po, sir. Wala na po.
Wala na. How about from the Soksai? Jamila, may question na din ko?
Sir, wala po, sir.
Wala naman. Okay. So, shall we, Claire, may question pa, Claire?
Wala po, sir. Wala po.
Okay, then. We continue. Okay. Yung mga iba, may mga questions kayo? Check na natin yung mga iba. How about the others? Yung mga live ngayon. Okay. Yung mga nandito ngayon. We have Ria. Ria, any question, Ria?
Wala po, sir.
Wala, Neil?
Wala po, sir.
Wala. Okay. Si Michael.
Sir, wala na po. Clear na po.
Eshel. Wala. Dun sa math majors, no, dun sa inyong mga test items later, you focus on the you focus on the concepts kung nahihirapan kayo na gumawa ng mga true false statements doon sa doon sa true false. Doon sa inyong learning content. Pero pwede rin naman na pwede rin naman sabihin ninyo na para mag-solve pa rin sila kung totoo, hindi. Pwede naman, the answer to this problem, blah, 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 is, okay, that would also be a good true-false item. Okay? So may we then continue our discussion. May we now proceed to the next one. And that is on, the next one is on matching test type. We now proceed to matching test. Okay, nasabi na natin yan. Ano ito? Okay. The last one pala to remember about true-false test is this, that be sure to include directions that tell students how and where to mark their responses. So, halimbawa, ilagay niyo sa directions niyo, where should they put their answer? Ano dapat siya sulat nila? Should it be merely T or merely F? Kasi kapag T or F lang na capital, pwede kasi madaya later yung T na gawing F. Okay, so tingnan din natin para maiwasan yung mga cheating and other or tampering of answers. Dapat you have to be very clear. Kaya usually, ang sinasabi ko sa mga estudyante ko, you write the complete word false, the complete word true in the space provided before each item. Okay, yun ang sinasabi ko na sa ganun ay maiwasan ang tampering of answers. Okay, so may we now proceed to matching test. Okay. The first guideline is include directions that clearly state the basis for matching the stimuli with the responses. So pag sinabi mo na direction, match the following, that is a very undesirable direction for matching test type. Sabi natin dito, you really have to be very specific. What will they match? How do you call those in column A and those in column B? Okay, so dapat merong relationship. Example, desirable direction. Class direction sa hindi direction na walang S. Directions, okay? Kapag sinabi ko sin direction, you're referring to north, south, southeast, southwest. Pero pag sinabi mo directions, we mean maraming direction or we mean procedures or things that they have to follow in doing a certain task. Directions, desirable. On the line to the left of each identifying location and characteristics in column 1, write the letter of the country in column 2 that is best defined. Each country in column 2 may be used more than once. So that is a very clear instruction or clear direction. Why? Because it says there na dito niyo isusulat yung sagot ninyo ay mamatch ninyo yung mga location and characteristics dito sa column na ito doon sa bansa na kanilang tinutukoy doon sa kabilang column. Okay na sinasabi. Okay? Sa Pilipino, sa soft-side, ito natin gagawin yan. Okay? Ihanay ang mga, for example, ihanay ang mga lokasyon sa unang hanay sa bansa na tinutukoy nito sa pangalawang hanay. Ang mga bansa sa pangalawang hanay ay pwedeng gamitin ng paulit-ulit. Okay? That is what we call as desirable directions when we decide to make use of matching type of test. Second guideline. Use only items that share the same foundation of information. Okay? Meaning to say, you make use of items only that would fall under one category, under a common category. Unrelated topics included in the same matching item may allow for obvious matches and mismatches. So better make use of matching test types if this information, if this learning content share the same foundation, share similar category of information. For example, this test may be done in these types: terms and definitions. Okay, definitions sa column 1, terms sa column 2, phrases with other phrases, causals with effects, parts with larger units, problems with solutions, capital cities to countries. Okay, ano pa? problem to, for example, solution to answer another, right? So they have to share a common foundation of information.
Sir, sa matching,
Yes po, yes po. Any question?
sir, sa matching type, kunwari sa math, sir, pwede lang na mag-combine sa matching type yung sa column 1, sir, terms and kunwari problems. Tapos sa column 2, sir, definitions and solutions.
Hindi
Parang
pwede.
kunwari, 1 to 2, sir, terms siya, sir. Tapos 3 to 4,
Hindi pwede.
problems.
Better separate the directions.
Dapat iisang ano lang, sir. Kung baga kung problems lahat, 1 to
Yeah.
5, sir. Ganun,
O,
sir.
yun sinasabi natin na they have to share the same foundation of information. Kung problems ang lahat. Kung sagot lang lahat. Okay? Kung mathematical concept, then definition of that mathematical concept lang. Yun lang atin ko. Hindi pwede na mag-mix yung foundation. Mag-mix yung klase o category ng information. Okay? Okay ba?
Yes po, sir.
Okay. Next guideline. Avoid grammatical or other clues to the correct response. Ito para dun sa mga ibang subjects na highly conceptual. Okay? O, tama, undesirable. So, directions niya. Match the following in order to complete the sentences on the left. This is so undesirable. Kasi may clue na dyan kung anong sagot. Kasi nga, merong grammatical or other clues. For example, Plato insisted that the government was, o, saan dyan? Plato insisted that the government was, pwede itong, di ba? Pwedeng dalawa lang pagpilian niya. Ito, pwedeng tatlo lang pagpilian niya. Tama? So, eliminated na si A and E. Okay? Machiavelli wrote about achieving political and inevitably unity in the Prince. Hobbes argued that human nature made the absolute monarchy desirable. Marx was a German philosopher and economist who founded communism. So, napakadaling sagutin. This is an undesirable matching type of test. To make it desirable, directions, on the line to the left of each statement, write the letter of the philosopher from the right-hand column that the statement describes. Use each philosopher once. So this is a very clear direction. This is unclear direction. Okay, so look at this. Okay? So, isang foundation of information lang. Yung sinabi nila about government, yung political sciences. Okay? Ito yung sinasabi natin, divine kanina, na they have to share one common or same foundation of information. Okay? Another guideline to follow. The column of stimuli on the left should set the question clearly. Yung nandito sa left, okay, the column of on the left sa matching type, yung question mismo, yung stem mismo, should set the question clearly. For example, ito, undesirable match the following, city dwellers, hunter-gatherers, pastoral nomads, wild animal farm. Ano to? Okay, so parang hindi mo alam kung paano, kung alam, i-guess pa ng bata kung anong relationship. So better you say, on the line to the left of each definition, write the letter of the term in the right-hand column that is defined. Use each term only once. So, ito yung mga different types of nomads, different nomads. So, different types of community, pastoral nomads, ranchers, hunter-gatherers, city dwellers, and farmers. So, description niya dito sa column A. Ang mga nandito pa sa column A, these are all descriptions about types of communities in the early times. Okay? So, hanapin ko kung anong klaseng community ang nire-describe ni column A. So, yung natawag natin the column of stimuli on the left should set the question clearly. Other things to remember in matching type, the stem, longer in construction than the options, must be in the first column, while the options are usually shorter, must be in the second column. So, ulitin ko yun ha, yung may pinakamahabang, yung mahabang pagkako-construct, dapat lagi siya doon sa left, sa first column. Yung mga shorter, dapat nasa column B. Okay? Pero hindi ibig sabihin na paghalo-haloin nyo. Dapat pa rin, kahit longer pa rin nila sa column A, make sure na they share the same foundation of information. Definitions lahat. column B yung redefine. Okay? Sa cities, sa for example sa capital cities and countries, pwedeng countries sa column A, pwedeng kasi halos parehas lang naman ang mga halos parehas na short naman yung mga terms na ito. The options must be more in number than the stems to prevent the student from arriving at the answer by mere process of elimination. So, ibig sabihin yung options natin, column B natin, yung second column natin, dapat mas marami sila kaysa sa dun sa column A. Okay? Klaro po yun na mas marami dapat nasa column B yung options kaysa sa column A. To help the examinees find the answer easier, arrange the options alphabetically or chronologically, whichever is applicable. Okay, yung options dapat naka-arrange alphabetically, chronologically, whichever is applicable. Okay, so those are the other things to remember when we construct matching type of test. Okay, any question? None. Okay, so that ends our discussion. Yes, okay.
Ano naman daw kapag 3 columns, sir?
Kapag?
Yung 3 columns na matching type, sir.
That is another type of matching type. Okay, that is another variation of matching type. That can also be done. Walang problema doon. That can also be done. But make sure na yung bawat column pa rin, ipapalo pa rin natin yung guidelines. Make sure na yung bawat column pa rin should share the same foundation of information. Okay, for example, no, na 3 column, ganito. Column 1, okay, column 1, cities. Countries. Column 2, capital cities. Column 3, official language. Pwede yun. Okay? So, walang problema po doon. Pero make sure na yung nasa gitna, talagang pwede siyang ipares doon sa unang column and even doon sa third column. Okay? So, that is a variation, another type of matching test. Pwede namang 3, pwede pang 4, pwede pang 5, hanggat kaya. Okay? Pero dapat klaro yung direction mo. Kasi pwede na you pair column A to column B and pair column B to column C. Or pwede rin na you pair column A to column B, then column A to column C. Okay, so you just have to be very clear in your directions when you do a three column matching type or a 4-column matching type. You just have to be very clear with your directions or with your instructions. Okay?
Okay po, sir.
Any other question? Any other question? May mga tanong po ba? Wag po kayo mahiya magtanong. If it's about your learning, if your question concerns about your learning in this course, please do not be too hesitant to ask. Okay, to ask questions. O baka naman meron na kayong nagawang sample dyan na pwede pa-evaluate kung tama or hindi. Pwede naman. Meron ba kayo nagawang sample question dyan? Okay, pwede nyo pa-evaluate na ngayon kung tama o mali. Nang sa ganun ay makapagpasa kayo ng magandang sagot or worksheet na merong kalidad.
Sir, yung clarification lang po, sir.
Yes po.
Yung sinabi mo kanina, sir, yung pagpipilian nila, sir, mas madami ba? Mas
marami dapat siya kumpara sa column 1.
Okay, sir.
Kasi ang problema diyan kapag halos parehas lang, okay, ang mangyayari kasi is pwedeng manghula na lang si estudyante. Okay? Usually common mistake yan ng mga teachers. Kahit ako nagkakamali ako dyan. Common mistake yan sa mga teachers usually. Okay, any other question?
Sir, maipa-kuha lang kami.
Yes, sir. Pa-check.
Sir, ipa-check kami, sir. Naguguluhan kami kasi sa kwan, sir, sa directions, making directions in matching type, sir.
Yes, yes.
Sir, basahin namin kung check to, sir. So,
Okay.
ganito yung ginawa namin, sir. In column A are the ancient civilization of the world.
Okay.
Choose on the rivers provided in column B where each of these civilizations flourish. Write the letter on the blank provided before the number of each
Oh,
civilization.
that's a very clear instruction.
Ay, sige.
Uh,
Naguguluhan lang kami, sir. Kasi.
That is a very clear insight. That's the other way of telling it naman. Okay, lalo na kung, kasi kapag dugtong-dugtong mga sentence mo, isang sentence lang siya o tatawag natin complex sentence, it may confuse the students also. If you can break down, if you can break these complex sentences into different sentences to make it clearer, then that would do. That would be better. Okay, tama naman yung ginawa nyo. In column, ano sabi, in column A are blah blah blah. Okay? Then in column B are blah 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 blah. O pwede naman yung ganoon. Wala namang problema. Kung ako magbabasa nun, that's very clear. Kasi ang pag-check ko later dyan is, kapag babasahin ko yung directions related of nalito ako sa instruction ninyo, then that is already a question. Okay? On the guideline, whether you followed it or not. But based on my assessment now, that is a very clear direction. Okay?
Sige, sir. Thank you, sir.
Bert, any other question? Meron bang naglagay sa chat? Meron bang message? O wala. Sir, may mag-join. Sir, pa-accept daw po yung mga mag-join, sir. Ha, 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 hala, ha, ha, ha. Sabi ni Joseph. Okay, any more question?
Sir Ekwan,
Ano yun, Joseph?
sir, parang magbibigay ako ng suggestion sa math.
Sige, sige.
Nasabi ko kay Michael to, pero kung kunyari meron yung topic nyo is yung mga subsets or sets, sir, desirable pa sa pag true or false is that gagawa sila ng ng illustration, yung parang yung bilog, tapos basta dun sa set, parang diagram, tapos doon na lang magfo-fall doon lahat magfo-fall yung question sila sa true or false.
Pwede naman.
Maganda yung suggestion ni ni Jovin.
Pwede naman yun. Maganda naman yun. Tama yun. Kasi it's just a matter, hindi ibig sabihin na tinuturo ko sa inyo itong mga test types na ito na hindi na kayo pwede maging flexible or creative. Okay? May mga pamamaraan na pwede mong gawing, ito lang yung mga major types of objective test. Pero kung pwede mo siyang gawan ng variation, ng another touch, ng another way of doing it, then do it. But make sure na yung guidelines pa rin ay applicable, yung guidelines pa rin ay nakapalo. Wala namang problema doon. Okay? Any more question? Any more concern? Ang exam niyo 80 items lang ha.
Sir, move ba ang exam?
Hindi po.
Sir, ano sir?
Ang exam niyo ay 80 items.
So, di ba may bagyo, Char?
May bagyo ko dyan. Sa Sunday
Sir,
darating.
Sir?
Sa Sunday magka-landfall, pero hindi sa atin.
Pero walang akad break. Char.
Meron ko yung department of the ba?
Sir, di ba dalawa yung bagyo?
Isa, Rolly.
Sir, meron pa, sir. Super typhoon na isa.
Ano
Yung
isa?
letter, basta yung S.
Yes, ano?
Ewan ko ata, sir. Basta yun.
Hindi. Isa lang ang nabasa ko sa GMA News TV.
Sir, pusta. Charot.
Hindi ako nagsusugal. Okay, now, we have to decide now because we still have one quiz, pero I'm planning that instead of a quiz, you will do a unit test. The unit test that I'm planning to have, I'm planning that you will have is a 50-item unit test, okay, which cover all the things we discussed, okay, all the things that we discussed for midterms. so that this will prepare you, this will serve as a review prior to the midterm examination. Would you like that? Pero objective test naman lahat.
Okay lang, sir. Ilang items ba, sir?
Yes,
50
sir.
items lang, 50 items.
Sir, cover niya is prelims and midterms?
Hindi, midterms lang.
Okay, sir.
Okay lang.
Review lang.
Kailan nyo gusto? Pwedeng Monday? Or gusto nyo mag-relax sa Monday? Gusto nyo this Saturday? Or gusto nyo this tonight?
Hala, wag, sir.
O kailan nyo gusto? Next week? Monday na lang, no?
Pwede lang, sir.
Pero Monday is All Souls Day. Kayo bang bibisita sa sa namatay niyong mga namayapan yung mga kamag-anak o sila pupunta sa inyo?
Di ba bawal na, sir? Kapon ng last
So
visit.
sila pupunta sa inyo?
Okay lang, sir. Charot.
Oo. Basta remind nyo sila na mag-face mask ka, saka mag-face. Okay, so if there are no more questions, so kailan din Monday na lang. Monday na lang ang ang Monday gawin ko na lang na ang unit test pero gawin ko available from 12 a.m. up to 11:59 p.m. Pero 1.5 hours lang pwedeng i-take yung 90 minutes lang pwedeng i-take yung unit test. Pero any time of that day. Okay?
Ay, pwede, maganda.
Okay,
Oh,
so ganun na
sir.
lang. Kasi anyway, review test lang naman siya. Pero part pa rin siya ng computation ng grade ninyo na part siya ng quiz. Okay?
Sige po, sir.
Sir, multiple choice lahat nung kwan exam ay
Ano?
sa
Sige.
midterm, sir.
Okay, saglit lang. I-open ko lang pero hindi ko i-share sa inyo.
Wala, sir. Go na, share na. Di ba dapat share your
Pa-share na,
blessings?
sir.
Okay, that's cheating. Walang hiya kayo. Hindi pwede yun. Okay. Now, allow me to explain yung midterm exam ninyo. Ito ang midterm exam. Test 1 is multiple choice. Okay, the multiple choice is
Sir, naka-share screen ka, sir.
hindi kaya. Okay. The multiple choice is 30 items. Okay? 30 items po siya. Okay? Then we also have multiple response test. Okay? Ang multiple response test ay 15, 7 items. 7 items. Yung 5 items ay 3 points each. Tapos yung last 2 items ay 4 points each.
Sir, madami ka kinuha sa prelims?
Wala akong kinuha sa prelims.
Sige,
Lahat
sir. Okay.
midterms. Okay?
Okay.
Tapos yung last 2 items doon sa multiple response, ang ginawa ko dito ay nagbigay ako ng halimbawa na matching type of test. I-examine ninyo ito at alamin kung anong mga guidelines ang hindi na-follow.
Okay, sir.
Okay? Tapos yung isa naman, that is number, yun yung una, yung isang item doon sa multiple response. Yung isang item naman, yung last item, meron ko binanggit na sample multiple choice test. Alamin niyo yung 4 na hindi na-follow. Okay, na guideline. Okay? Pero may mga options, i-click lang ninyo kung ano mga guidelines ang hindi na-follow. Then we also have matching type test. Okay? Yung matching type test ay merong tatlong klase. Yung matching type A, you match the questions in column A to its level of cognitive complexity in column B. Okay? That's matching type A. Yung matching type B, match the stem of a multiple choice item in column A to the guideline it violates in column B.
Okay, sir.
Then matching type C, you have to match the true-false item in column A to the guideline it violates in column B. Okay?
Sir, 80 yan, sir.
Ha?
80 no, sir.
80 items. Tapos yung test 4 is 10 points.
Hala.
Subjective type of test ito yung test 4.
Sir, hinati-hati mo.
Oo, hati-hatiin ko later. So meron part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4.
Sir, mas
Okay?
mahirap yun.
Mahirap ba yun? Hindi, dagdagan ko naman ng time eh.
Sige, sir.
Hindi ko total, for example, gawin ko yung multiple choice, gawin kong yung multiple choice, gawin kong 45 minutes. Kaya yon?
Okay lang, sir.
Okay, 30 items na naman siya. Yung multiple response, gawin kong 30 minutes.
Ay, so
Or
hindi
gawin
lang siya 1 hour. Sir,
or
hindi
Sir,
lang siya 1
bakit?
for
hour.
Sir, dapat ano, sir?
oh,
Ano yun? Dapat lahat ng test is pare-pares ng type. Hindi, meron kasi kami teacher ganun eh.
hindi pwede na para-parehas kasi depende sa complexity ng test. Di ba?
Same time lahat sila matatapos.
Same time.
Depende
Sir,
naman kasi yung
kaya,
hirap dun. Kasi, kunwari sa part 1, true or false, gawin mo 45 minutes, tapos gawin mo 45 minutes ulit. Parang waste, parang ano lang, parang yung given time na sana, mas madami sa mas mahirap na part na lang gawin sana.
O, sige.
Hindi, meron naman kasi ano.
Mag-decide tayo ngayon. Hindi, gawin natin siyang available. Gawin natin siyang available. Kasi, for example, ang gagawin natin, i-decide natin kung ilang minutes per test type. Tapos, per test type na lang. Gawin natin, yung availability niya per test type. Yun nga lang, magkakandalituan tayo sa ano.
Sa time, sir, kasi merong fix ang time.
Kasi, alimbawa, sir, ang inuna ko is,
sir,
Yeah,
test 1, test 2 na lang, sir. Mas
together.
madali. Yes, sir, mas madali yun, sir. Yung subjective na lang yung ikwan mo, sir.
Yung, yung subjective na lang separate ko.
Oo,
sir,
sir. Basta,
Yes,
basta
sir.
wag mo lang ihalo yung essay sa kwan, sir, sa multiple choice.
So, yung subjective test, actually hindi siya essay. Document submission siya.
Sir?
Document submission, draft box assessment. Meron akong ipaprovide na worksheet that you have to complete.
Yun na lang din yung i-separate mo, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sige. So,
Sir, basta specify.
ilang minutes ang kailangan ninyo? Sige, gawin natin 1.5 pa rin yung objective, no?
1
1.5
minute.
hours yung objective.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yung part 1.
Yung part 1 objective test, gawin natin at 90 minutes. Tapos, yung subjective test, gawin natin, gawin na lang natin 1 hour. Okay lang sa inyo?
Yes, sir.
1 hour lang ilagay ko, pero bahala kayo kung may exam kayo after that. O bahala na kayo mag-manage yung time niyo. But I will make it 1 hour. Okay?
Sir, dun
Okay
sa,
po, sir.
sir,
Dun
specify naman na di ba, na specify mo sa una, sir, na multiple response siya or hindi, sir, no?
Malalaman naman dun later.
Okay, sir. Kasi meron kasi teacher namin kasi na hindi niya kasi na-specify, nakakaiyak.
Paano di ba specify na specify naman dun sa LMS yan?
Sir, hindi. Dun sa isa naming subject. Multiple response pala siya. Di namin alam.
Ay, ganon.
True.
Ilagay ko lang later, this is a multiple response test. Yung ilagay ko. According to Bishano, this is a multiple response test.
True,
Sir,
sir.
basis mo, sir.
Okay. So, any
Basta
more
wag mo lang ihalo yung essay, sir, sa kwan. Mahirap mag-answer.
Okay, sige. Noted po.
Salamat, sir.
Okay, so any more concern before we end our discussion? Because I think because I think Annabelle is excited for the closing prayer. Annabelle?
Sir?
May tanong ka din ko?
Sir?
May tanong ka? Wala.
Wala po, sir.
Okay, sige din. So you lead us the closing prayer, ating po.
Let us pray. In Father, Son, the Holy Spirit. Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for looking at our discussion. And Lord, grant us the courage to fight all the evils around us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. In the name of the
In
Father, the
Father,
Son, and the
the
Holy
Holy
Spirit. Amen. Okay, thank you for attending, and we're successful completing our midterms. Okay, and please continue to help yourself learn all the things we discussed in this course, and please prepare well for the midterm examination. I really hope and pray that everyone will get a passing grade in this course in assessment of learning one. Okay, so goodbye everyone. Take care.
Bye, sir.
Advisor.